Chances are you've probably heard of the NEXAT, and maybe even heard that it gives you a 10% yield bonus. I've heard that thrown around and maybe seen a scientific test or two to see whether or not it does give you a boost. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be scientifically testing 5 different crops on the same exact field. That's field 37 right above me here because it's a perfect square and it's fairly medium sized. I'm going to be testing the 5 crops of wheat, canola, long grain rice, corn, and soybeans, as it gives you a good variety. All of the crops will be at 100% yield bonus or as close as you can get to it, and I'm going to be doing them with normal equipment and with NEXAT equipment. First up is wheat, and I actually already did all the tests for wheat. Unfortunately, I was messing around with some settings and had a formatting issue where I recorded in HDR and you can't watch HDR on YouTube, so the footage looked absolutely terrible. I'll show you some of it. Despite the footage looking amazing on my screen and honestly much better than the normal settings, I did have to go back to the old settings. Nevertheless, with wheat, I found something interesting, and now instead of doing only 2 tests, one with normal equipment, one with NEXAT, now I have to do 3 different tests. And I'll tell you what I mean with canola, which is what we're going to be doing right now. First up is planting. Actually, I lied. First up is mulching, but I already did that. And then you cultivate after that is step 2, and then planting is step 3. So step 3 is planting. And since I have 2 seeders, I have a worker doing the up and downs in the middle of the field, and I go around and do the headlands at the same time so I can get this done quicker, because if you've done the math, I need to do this field, which again is not teeny tiny. I mean, it's a medium-sized field. I have to do it 10 times, except I added another test, so now I have to do it 15 different times. And it takes around an hour each time, so definitely going to be spending a fair amount of time with this, as seems to be the norm for me. Then after we plant, we do, of course, need to roll, and this goes pretty quick because we got the quad track and the big roller in the game. And this just gives us an extra 2.5% yield boost, because as I said, we're chasing the highest yield boost possible for every crop, every single time. Then after the rolling, we do fertilize the field, of course, to get that full 100% yield bonus, which you can see right here in the bottom right. 100% yield bonus. And next up, it's harvest time. And after this harvest, we're going to do the same thing, all the same steps we just did 2 more times, because we have 3 total harvests we want to do, and I'll explain each of those. Obviously, this is the normal one, so the entire field is planted, 100% yield boost, and we're using the Claas Lexion Combine. And for this harvest, we're using the NEXAT, and we used it to plant as well, and this is the harvest for using the NEXAT the way it's intended to be used. You can see the little lines through the field. That's because this is a controlled traffic machine, and the literal purpose of it is to control where your tires go on the field every single year. That's how you control the traffic. So the NEXAT is designed with the tires on the outside, the farming implement on the inside, so that's how you farm, and then every year you drive these same tire tracks. So that's getting compacted, but the main part of the field where you're growing your crops doesn't get compacted, so your yields are higher. That's the reason that they added the 10% yield bonus, or however much it is. We're testing to see exactly how much it is. But, yeah, this is how you're supposed to use it, so that's how I'm going to use it. Unfortunately, if you see here in the bottom right, it says the yield bonus is 97%. That's because there's no roller with the NEXAT machine, and it would completely defeat the point to use NEXAT and then use another tractor and drive down the middle of the field with a roller, because it would compact the middle of the field. So 97% is the highest you can get with NEXAT, and you have to leave these strips missing throughout the whole field as well. Also, you have to set it to either 0 degrees or 90 degrees working direction, because otherwise these lines will not show up very well, and that's Giant's fault because they can't make accurate textures in 2025, which is absolutely crazy to say, but that's the case. But yeah, that's the NEXAT harvest the way it's intended. And now for this last harvest, this is if you want to use the NEXAT incorrectly. The field does get 100% yield bonus because I used a regular seeder, or you could accomplish this using the NEXAT seeder as well and just rolling it. But again, you're using it incorrectly because you're not having those lines in the middle of the field. But this is the best test to see exactly how much yield difference there is between using a normal combine and the NEXAT, because the field is the exact same. The other test is more realistic, so I'm doing it as well, but this is more scientifically accurate because the field is the exact same. The only thing that changes is the harvester. Well, I did the corn and the long grain rice as well, but I did unfortunately have to cut soybeans out because it has been such a long time since I put a video out. There's a combination of things that led to that, but I cut soybeans out, so we're only doing 4 crops: wheat, canola, corn, and long grain rice. And now I've got them all done so we can get the results. So there's 3 harvests for every crop, as I said. Number 1 is for the normal equipment, as you saw. Number 2 is if you use NEXAT in the correct way, which of course you cannot get 100% yield because there is no roller with NEXAT. But when you do long grain rice, you don't need to roll it, so that actually did get 100%. Keep in mind these results would only get more and more accurate the more crops I did and the larger field size that I were to do. But I don't have time for that, and this took 20 hours as it is, with only 4 crops. So then the third harvest is if you use NEXAT in the wrong way, or the way that most people are going to use it, or most people do use it, at least on YouTube that I've seen, where they just use normal equipment or even plant with the NEXAT, but they don't do the tram lines in the middle. They just use it as a normal piece of equipment, even though it is drastically different. We're going to call that hybrid mode. So we've got normal, then harvest with the NEXAT, then a hybrid harvest using a mix of both. And that hybrid is to get us perfect results. We're isolating the variable. The only difference from the normal to the hybrid was using the NEXAT harvester, which should tell us exactly how much yield it is. So for the results, with wheat, normal equipment yielded 43,470 liters, NEXAT yielded 40,533 liters, and the hybrid harvest yielded 47,821 liters. That is a 6.76% reduction in yield for NEXAT, so we lost almost 7% yield by using NEXAT correctly. And with the hybrid harvest, we got 10.1% extra yield, so a little bit more than the supposed 10% yield. With canola, normal yielded 28,328 liters, the NEXAT equipment yielded 27,133 liters, and the hybrid harvest yielded 30,751 liters. That's a yield of negative 4.22% for the NEXAT, so we lost about 4%. And the hybrid harvest was an 8.55% boost to yield, so close to that 10%, but not quite there. I'm not sure exactly why it was different. Long grain rice with normal equipment yielded 43,381 liters, the NEXAT equipment yielded 42,538 liters, and the hybrid equipment yielded 47,699 liters. That's a yield reduction of only negative 1.94%, so we lost almost 2% yield using NEXAT. And the regular, or the hybrid harvest gave us 9.95% of extra yield. So that's, again, pretty close to the 10%. And finally, with corn, normal equipment yielded 44,931 liters. NEXAT equipment yielded 43,086 liters, or a reduction of 4.11%. And the hybrid yielded 49,419 liters, which was a yield boost of 9.99%. The overall averages, if you use NEXAT in the correct way, you will lose 4.26% yield. But if you use hybrid the incorrect way, or if you just want to know exactly how much the NEXAT boosts your yield, that came out to 9.63% on average across 4 crops. Again, there's like 20 different crops in the game, so if you were to try them all out, your numbers would likely be a little more accurate than mine, but this is a lot more testing than the average person would do. And I'm going to go ahead and say that that 10%, I feel like this is far enough off of that 10% to show that Giants messed up somewhere if they wanted a true 10% yield boost. There's some rounding error somewhere, or they calculated the percentages somewhere else in the math, and the way that the yields are calculated in the game are different. So it leads to it being close to the 10% they wanted, but maybe not exactly right on. But still, it's essentially 10% yield boost. You're not going to notice that 0.4% that you're missing. But if you were to do a crop like canola, which seemed to only yield 8.5% higher, that was by far the lowest, you might notice a difference you won't get quite 10% yield. Canola is already a pretty bad crop to farm, as it is, because it doesn't give you much money, but I enjoy doing it, so I'll still do it. But I was hoping that if you use NEXAT correctly, obviously you're not planting the entire field, but I was hoping the yield boost that it gives would at least offset the field that you weren't planting and you'd get around the same. But you do lose 4.26% yield, so that's actually going to hurt you in the long run. Granted, NEXAT is, if you watch one of my other NEXAT videos, it was a lot cheaper than using normal equipment for the largest field in Farming Simulator, and it went much faster. I used the same size of equipment, and it was cheaper to buy the NEXAT, and it did the field in several hours less than the normal equipment took. But you will lose money if you use it correctly. If you're not going to use it correctly, then hey, by all means, get your 10% yield boost. But anywho, I'm going to go ahead and finish the video here. I apologize for it taking so long. I've had quite a bit going on, from game setting errors that ruined the first few hours of recording to starting a new job and getting it settled in there. And also this video, I had to add a third harvest, so that took a lot longer than anticipated, but I still enjoyed it, and I hope you guys did too. I'll see you next time. Peace.